Good morning, everybody. The Streets, Traffic, and Refuse Committee will be called to order. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Murphy. Here. Alderman Coder. Alderwoman Bosley.
Here.
Or Alderman Bosley.
Yes, sir.
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Martin.
Here.
Alderwoman Middlebrook.
Present.
Chairman Boyd.
Present.
President Reed. You have 5 present, Mr. Chairman. You have a quorum.
Thank you. The first board bill we will hear is Board Bill 71, sponsored by Alderman Vaccaro, will be handled by Alderwoman Murphy.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the committee. I have a board bill about a 3-way stop sign sponsored by Joe Vaccaro. He couldn't be here this morning. It's an ordinance establishing a 3-way stop at Pernod and Tedmar, regulating all traffic traveling east and westbound. As far as I know, it's been okayed by the street department. And he just asked if I would introduce and ask for your favorable passing.
Okay. Alderman Bosley, any questions?
No, ma'am.
It is in his ward.
Yeah, there it is. Is it in his ward?
It is, sir. Thank you.
Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderwoman Martin. Have no questions. I'll entertain a motion on Board Bill 71. Okay, how about this?
Check.
I move Board Bill 71 pass out of committee with a due pass recommendation.
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Second. It's been moved and second. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderman Coder. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Bosley.
Aye.
Alderwoman Martin.
Aye.
Alderwoman Middlebrook.
Aye.
Chairman Boyd.
Aye.
President Reed. You have 5 aye votes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Board Bill 69, Board Bill 71 passes out of committee with a due pass recommendation. Next board bill before us is Board Bill 69, sponsored by myself, presented by the Honorable Tashara Jones, Treasurer.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Treasurer Tashara Jones, and I'm presenting our annual budget. This is my CFO, Michelle Smart. She's going to review some of the highlights and changes from last fiscal year to this fiscal year, and then both of us will entertain any questions you have.
Otherwise, if you have any handouts, we'll go ahead and take them at this time.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I will, as Ms. Jones just indicated, explain the differences between budget fiscal 18 versus budget fiscal 19, which is coinciding with the handout that you were just given. Our largest variances, our total variance between the 2 years is $692,000. Fiscal 19 being larger than fiscal 18. The reason for that deals with specific categories. First one being personnel, $346,000 increase over last budget, and that is due to mainly 3 full-time positions being added into parking for IT, HR, and Treasury. We have also increased our PEO staffing salaries with an additional 79-cent rate increase, which equates to $52,000. We increased our event staffing salary First, the hours, the total number of hours that they need to be staffed was an additional $35,000, and their rate increased to $12, equated to $43,000. Remaining increases deal with overall salary increase for merit of 1.5%, and our per performance staff being increased to $11 per hour. We also experienced a health care savings of $38,000 between the 2 years. Other major categories include the facilities and ground services for $95,000, which is attributable to our maintenance agreement on our new revenue equipment in the garages. When we installed that equipment in most of our garages 2 years ago, there was a 2-year maintenance included in that installation, and now in fiscal 19 you will see that maintenance cost beginning, which is the reason for that increase. In our tenant improvements area, which deals with our rental property, which are managed by Gershman Properties, we will be experiencing a favorability of about $66,000 because our tenants do have the option in their lease to exercise tenant improvements. In fiscal 19, those tenant improvements are not as large as they were in fiscal 18, so you will see the $66,000 favorability there. Our banking and merchant fees, since we are now taking credit cards with our meters as well as within our garages for monthly and daily parking, that has increased due to the additional use from our meters and in our garages for people using their credit cards. We did renegotiate the merchant fee structure with our gateway, which is Chase, which did give us a $50,000 savings, but the additional increase of approximately $111,000 is due to the fact of additional usage by the patronage. Our outsourcing fees, which deal with the maintenance and collection of our meters, and the Park Mobile application that is used on our meters, is increasing this year, $257,000. That mainly deals with the CPI index increase that is built into our agreement with Conduent, which does the meter and the meter collection and maintenance, as well as additional usage with the Park Mobile app and additional opportunities to use Park Mobile within our garages for events that are scheduled for next year using event scanners. Our debt continues to be a favorability. As you all know, we did refunding last year, and as a result of last year and the year before, those refundings continue to bring us savings on our debt, and has contributed $176,000 favorability to our bottom line. Then there are various other areas that have contributed about $125,000 of an increase, which mainly deals with IT development. As you all know, that we have our own IT department, and so as we continue to develop that and develop our network, there are monies associated with that, as well as additional training that we have scheduled with our staff for safety training, sexual harassment, software licenses, again, associated with IT, as well as different tools and equipment that need to be upgraded within our facilities. Do you have any questions at this time?
Okay. Alderwoman Murphy.
No questions yet, thank you.
Alderman Bosley.
Not right this second, I'm sorry.
Okay. Alderwoman Martin.
No questions this time.
Alderwoman Middlebrook. Okay. Michelle, tell me how long the outsourcing contract lasts. What's the expiration date on that?
It's a 5-year contract.
Okay, do you know when it expires?
It started in 2015, so 2020.
2015. Okay, professional services. Talk to me about what professional services, what contracts you have on the professional services.
In that category, that would include the KPMG audit contract, as well as our Brinks services that we deal with the coins. Also have Comer Capital, which is our finance company. And those would be the major categories in that.
Okay, are those open-ended contracts?
They are, some of them are, yes.
Okay, so is there an expiration date on any of them right now? Or just within a certain amount of days you have a right to cancel?
At this point, I would, no, they are open-ended.
Okay. Talk to me about legal services. What are we paying for out of legal services?
Our legal services, you mean what is included in that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Of course, all of our legal firms that we deal with, Polsinelli, Armstrong, Teasdale, Stinson, Denton,
Okay. I'm very
or Nexus, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm very curious as to one of the contracts. That so SNR Denton provides what kind of services?
They are legal services. Policy.
Legal and policy services.
Okay. The current contract for SNR Denton, is that still valid?
Denton, they spun off and became the Nexus Group, so we renewed their engagement letter under Nexus Group.
So SNR Denton spent off,
No.
I'm sorry. So SNR Denton is no longer,
No, Denton still exists.
Okay.
But they spun off a portion of their policy and legal practice to become Nexus Group.
okay. And my understanding is that SNR Denton was providing policy advice and not legal advice. Is that correct?
No, they were providing both.
Is that what the contract states?
I don't have a contract in front of me, but I know that we have contacted them for legal services.
Okay, so what type of policy advice has been rendered to the Parking Commission?
We have filed several bills since I took office in 2013 at the Missouri House of Representatives. The first bill was to clear up some language related to how the supervisor of parking was reflected in the law. And just this past year, we filed a bill to add the Office of Financial Empowerment as an official duty of not only the city treasurer's office, but all county treasurers across the state of Missouri.
Okay, so this year, this fiscal year currently, I heard you say that over the years, there's been some work done, but let's talk about this fiscal year. So this fiscal year, what kind of policy advice has been rendered?
On the bill that I just spoke of,
Okay, the Office of Financial Empowerment.
yes.
And how much is that contract a month?
$4,000 a month,
The original contract with SNR Denton was $4,000 a month as well?
yes.
Okay. And so in 10 months, we've paid $40,000 to SNR Denton or Nexus. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And what we've gotten out of that was lobbying for a bill in Jefferson City for the Office of Financial Empowerment. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Nexus, how did that contract come about?
As I stated before, the Nexus Group spun off from Denton's, and now they have their own legal and policy practice.
So the Nexus contract and SNR Denton contract, is that a contract with only the treasurer yourself, or is that a contract with the Parking Commission?
That is a contract with the Parking Division.
Well, the Parking Division is not authorized to enter into any contracts.
According to the law, yes, I am.
The question was, is the contract with Nexus and S&R Denton for the treasurer, or is it for the parking commission?
They represent the parking division of the city of St. Louis.
Okay. And was there any consultation with the parking commission before this contract was signed?
No, there was not, no, there was not.
Okay. But shouldn't it have been? Shouldn't the parking commission have been consulted since it's paying for legal service or policy advice?
There are several contracts that we don't consult with the parking division on because I believe that as my duty as treasurer or my job description per state law, I can make and pay contracts.
But the state law also says that the parking commission is the oversight body. Is that correct?
According to the law that you are stating, probably.
Probably. So if the parking commission is the oversight body, how can you have the belief that you don't have to get authority from the parking commission to engage in contracts?
I'm trying to find out what's your point. Are you going to try to cut the contract or not? Or we can go back and
I want you
forth.
to answer the question, Madam Treasurer.
What was the question?
The question was, if the parking commission is the oversight body, what makes you think you have the sole authority to enter into contracts without consultation with the parking commission?
Well, I've entered into many contracts without the consultation of the parking division, parking commission.
And that's wrong.
That's your opinion.
No, I think it's fact. I think if most reasonable people would think that if you have an oversight committee, then whoever is governed underneath the oversight committee must get permission to engage in any type of contracts.
Well, that's
And
your opinion.
But it's a fact.
Your opinion.
So let's talk about the parking division. And first of all, I want to just thank all the parking enforcement people that are outside in the rain, in the snow, in the sun, being beat up on by our weather. Thank you so much for your service. I appreciate that. As a matter of fact, if you are here from the parking, if you're an employee of the parking division and you're being paid right now, would you please stand? Thank you. That's very gracious of the treasurer to pay you while you attend this very important committee. I hope it's very informative for you. Let's talk about the organization of the parking division. So there's a flow chart. Well, I'm just going to let you explain it because it probably would come across better if you explain it. So talk to us about the hierarchy and the flow of governance of the treasurer's office as it relates to parking and how it's intertwined.
That is a very vague question. Can you be more specific?
Like who reports to who? I mean, you're the office holder, so you're certainly at the top. And then what are the layers below?
Well, you have a table of organization right in front of you, so you already know the answer.
Would you please explain it?
I don't have the table in front of me, so I don't want to. Does the rest of the committee have a table as well?
You can go ahead and speak.
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Explain the flow of the parking division, the organizational chart. Explain how it works in the parking division.
According to this organizational chart, the parking administrator has an executive assistant, and the director of fiscal operations, fleet and safety, director of parking enforcement, manager, custodial services, director of off-street parking, and manager of facility operations all report to the parking administrator. That's pretty much it.
So it looks like the parking administrator basically handles the day-to-day of the parking division. Would that be correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so on this other flow chart, starting with yourself, let's work our way down and tell me what those roles and responsibilities are, please.
The chief of staff is responsible for all of the executive team, which includes the parking administrator, the director of administrative services, communications, fiscal, and the assistant treasurer.
So what office does the chief of staff work for?
Chief of staff reports directly to me.
Okay, so at the last parking commission meeting, I asked the question, how many employees of the treasurer's office actually gets paid from parking revenues? And your initial response was none. And then I reminded you, 2 from the Office of Financial Empowerment is being paid. The other comment was, well, some just kind of cross over when there's a need, right?
What's your question?
Am I correct? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No,
Is that
you're
what you
putting
said?
you're putting words in my mouth. What's
So
the
what was
question?
it? So what was it that you said?
I don't remember what I said.
Okay,
that
let me
was 2
ask
weeks
the
ago.
question right now. So how many employees of the treasurer's office is paid for out of parking division revenue?
There's a non-operational expense to the Office of Financial Empowerment that comes out of the parking budget. That can be, that's on the last category, area 57,000, non-operating. I'm sorry. Here, I'm sorry, non-operating, and that's category 575, 2,000, excuse me. And that's approximately 378,000 that gets transferred to Treasury Operations. And then those employees, which are the director of the Office of Financial Empowerment and the director of the Children's Savings Program, are paid from that line item.
Are those the only employees
Are those the only employees what?
paid for by parking revenue that works for the treasurer's office?
I'm sorry?
Are those the only employees that work for the treasurer's office? The
Meaning
office you
Treasury
would do the electing?
Operations?
Yes,
Or
the treasury office.
we added we're requesting to add a new position this year for accounting, as an accountant for the Treasury Operations. And as well as my executive assistant goes back and forth between Treasury Operations and parking. And then we have a number of staff that provide, that are paid for solely out of parking, that provide services in Treasury Operations. That would be IT, fiscal, executive staff, my chief of staff, maintenance, janitorial, to
So-
name a few.
They work for the treasurer's office.
They, I'm sorry.
So they work for the treasurer's office, but they're paid for out of parking revenue. Is that correct? So Michelle Smart, for example, she works for the treasurer's office?
Michelle is the is the chief financial officer or fiscal officer mainly for the parking division, but her duties also go into Treasury Operations.
So what role does she have in treasury operations?
She helps make sure that our Treasury Operations fiscal information is kept up to date. You want to also explain?
We are responsible for tracking, since the Treasury Operations only basically have expenditures. We are responsible for tracking their expenditures against their appropriations, their budgets. We process their vouchers as well as we do with the parking division vouchers. So we report on their financial status as we do with the parking division funds.
So, Madam Treasurer, are these positions authorized positions in the treasurer's office, or you're just augmenting support to the treasurer's office with the parking division?
We augment a lot of support to Treasury Operations with the parking division, and that has been done for several years, even before I took this office.
Okay, so the chief of staff is paid for 100% out of parking revenue, is that correct?
Yes.
And the chief of staff is actually works directly under you in the treasury's office. Is that correct?
The chief of staff works directly under me, period.
Is the chief of staff an authorized position in the treasurer's office?
I believe it is.
Okay, I don't think so. You have a director, deputy treasurer, is that correct?
I have an assistant treasurer.
Assistant treasurer, okay. So you have an executive assistant, right?
Yes.
But your executive assistant reports to the chief of staff, is that correct?
She reports to, yes, she reports to the chief of staff.
Okay,
According to the
and talk to
table.
me about the PR assistant and the need for the parking division to have a PR assistant.
Ms. Westbrooks works with Ms. Sanders. Both of them work on my schedule, various appearances, both in and out of town, and also works with our communications department or communications director on various collateral of the treasurer's office. Also helps keep our website up to date, and works on our social media along with our communications director.
But you have an IT department, right?
Yes.
So the IT department doesn't manage the website?
No, the IT department does not manage the website.
Okay, and talk to me about the director of administration. What's the purpose?
Shirley Rupchick, she's over human resources, as well as the custodial, she's the custodian of the office.
But you have a human resource manager, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then talk to me about the communications director, because you said the PR person does your scheduling, does social media, all that fun stuff, and helps out the executive assistant. So talk to me about the communications director.
Our communications director works with every out-facing presence of the office. That consists of all 3 websites that the treasurer's office has with the Office of Financial Empowerment, stltreasurer.org, as well as Park Louis. She handles all of the inquiries for press with our local media and as well as national media.
For parking.
For parking and for treasury, and for the Office of Financial Empowerment.
Okay. Do you have a deputy chief of staff?
That position is currently open.
It's currently open. How long has it been vacant?
March of this year.
So, you have a chief of staff, a PR assistant, a director of communications, administrative director, and a deputy chief of staff. Okay.
I'm sorry, there's no deputy chief of staff in the budget.
There's no deputy chief of staff in the budget?
No.
Okay, I thought I saw one.
Okay. Okay, that is, there's no deputy chief of staff in the budget.
So you've eliminated that position?
I wouldn't say it's been eliminated, it's been moved
It's been moved.
to, yes, to parking, the parking division, Keel Administrative Operations.
Madam Treasurer, let me go back to expenditure of funds for legal work. And I can't wrap my head around the fact that you feel it's okay to engage in contracts without consulting the parking commission. And the parking commission hadn't met in like 9 or 10 months. So certainly it's kind of hard to do business if you're not having meetings. But help me understand how a lawsuit settlement can be legal services. How do you book a $22,500 lawsuit judgment against you for legal services?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question one more time?
Okay, so the parking division paid $22,500 to Mr. Donald Gage for an employment discrimination lawsuit settlement.
Yes.
It was paid for out of legal services. How do you justify that?
It was a legal agreement. It came out of the judgment that was rendered in a legal settlement.
That's not a legal service rendered.
It's not a legal service rendered, yes, I understand that. But that is the guidance that was given us through the comptroller's office. We have done severance-type agreements of that nature, and that is where it has traditionally been recognized.
Okay. So, Madam Treasurer, let me ask you this. So are you of the opinion that the parking commission reports to the parking supervisor, or the parking supervisor reports to the parking commission? What's your opinion?
You're asking me to give a legal opinion, and
No, I'm not. I'm asking you some plain English.
I'm sorry, I'm not going to answer that question because that requires a legal interpretation, and I'm not an attorney.
Madam Treasurer, that is mumbo jumbo. You can read the state statute. The state statute is very clear. You can read a judge's opinion. The judge's opinion was very clear. So let me find the judge's opinion since you want a legal opinion. Let's see here. By the way, did you read the judge's opinion, Madam Treasurer?
No, I did not.
Did your chief of staff legal counsel read the opinion?
Yes, he probably did.
Could Mr. Jared Boyd please come to the microphone?
Members of the committee, good morning.
Good morning, thank you. And so you read the judge's opinion, is that correct?
I did. I don't have it with me right now.
Okay, but in the judge's opinion, do you remember him talking about oversight?
Like I said, I don't have the opinion handy right now and haven't read it in the past week. So.
All right, so let me just read a little bit, and you just tell me if it rings a bell. So it says subsection, this is page 12 of the opinion, subsection 2 of 82.487 Missouri statute in part, the treasurer as supervisor of parking meters by virtue of her office shall be subject to the oversight and authorized funding in whole or in part by the Parking Commission. Quote. Further, the Parking Commission is the city's authority for overseeing public parking, including planning and coordinating policies, programs, and operations for any parking facility or spaces owned in whole and part, leased, or managed by the Parking Division. 82.47.1, accordingly, while the treasurer serves as the supervisor of parking meters as chairperson of the Parking Commission on 82.485.4, she does not supervise the Parking Commission pursuant to the statute. Is that clear?
I think it warrants some context when I think the opinion is talking about a distinction between being chair of the Parking Commission and being supervisor of parking, which also in 82.487 provides the treasurer with authority to make and pay contracts and carry out operations for parking.
Yeah.
And most of, if not all, I should say all of the contracts are authorized in part by the Parking Division or through the Parking Commission because the Parking Commission is authorizing that budget. So there is oversight in the fact that the Parking Commission is the body that passes the budget that allows the parking supervisor, which is set forth in that statute, to actually pay contracts and operate the Parking Division. So that is kind of the balance of power that is referred to in that state statute and how our office is operated.
Would you agree that the comptroller signs off on contracts in the position?
Would I agree?
By charter, the comptroller signs contracts, enter into agreements.
For whom?
The city of St. Louis.
For City of St. Louis departments, correct, but for county offices, I'm not sure if that's the case.
I'm not referencing county offices. So the comptroller can sign and enter into contracts, and the mayor can sign into contracts. However, and that's within their authority, that's given by charter, but it also has to be given by a board bill by the legislative branch. So the legislative branch is kind of like the oversight for the executive branch. Would you agree?
Yes, the legislative branch provides oversight to the mayor's office and the comptroller's office.
And so the Parking Commission, being this entity created by the state by mistake, is the oversight body. Isn't that what the state statute says?
It is.
Okay.
But also, as I stated before, in that state statute, 82.487, they talk about oversight and budget, but they also explicitly provide the parking supervisor with the ability to make and pay contracts.
Absolutely.
And that's a state
they do.
law.
I
Gotcha.
agree with you 100%. However, the parking supervisor cannot engage in contracts without the authorized permission of the Parking Commission. It is, quote unquote, the oversight body. Therefore, the parking supervisor cannot, on that person's own, right now it's our current treasurer, Tashara Jones, cannot enter into contracts just because there's a portion of the state statute that you're interpreting gives her the authority to do so. You still have to have ultimate authority to execute contracts. Does that make sense?
Actually, it does not, because the state law explicitly gives the treasurer and I don't want to,
Right.
for the committee, I don't want to belabor this point, so we can actually read the statute if that is something that you guys need an interpretation on. So 82.487 states, let's see, so if we go to section 2, it says the treasurer of any city not within a county shall be the parking supervisor, also known as the supervisor of parking meters, for any parking facility or space owned in whole or part, leased or managed by the city parking division by virtue of his office, shall be subject to the oversight and authorized funding in whole or part by the Parking Commission. But it also says the treasurer can make and pay contracts.
Okay, right. And you know why it says that? And I'm not a lawyer, okay? But you have to give somebody the authority to execute because the body as a whole is not going to execute. Does that make sense?
That's what we've done, I
Okay,
guess.
but you cannot execute a contract without authority. Okay, so like you said, we're not going to belabor that. So thank you, appreciate that, Mr. Boyd. The city is inevitable. You know, the lawsuit has not had a final, has not been finalized, which I clearly understand, because there are other parts to the lawsuit, right?
That's correct.
Okay. But at the end of the day, it's pretty clear in the judge's ruling that those two statutes are unconstitutional. And it's the city's position that the parking commission truly right now is only 3 people. And we need to start looking at how we transition the parking division back, well, into city government. And so I'm going to be making recommendations, just some small steps to take in order to do that. I've had an opportunity to have different conversations with the director, Carl Phillips, and I think he's very well capable and qualified. Carl Phillips makes over $130,000 a year. And at $130,000 a year, that is an awesome responsibility. And it is my understanding, based on the testimony this morning by the treasurer, he governs all parking operations.
That's incorrect. That's a mischaracterization of her statements and a
So who governs
mischaracterization.
parking operations then?
Who governs? It's a collaborative effort. Carl Phillips does have a hand in managing the day-to-day operations and has direct reports in different aspects of parking, but I work on parking matters every day with Carl, as do other folks in the office, and Carl reports to me, so I'm the person who works with Carl, as do other people.
And you make $128,000 a year, right?
Haven't checked, but
You
I'm
know.
sure you do.
I'm sure everybody knows how much their paycheck
Okay.
is. Come on now, just be honest.
Okay.
You know, tell the truth. It will be greatly appreciated. So you make over $128,000 a year. Carl makes $130,000 a year. So he directly reports to somebody who makes $2,000 less than him.
Okay.
So I would think that Carl probably makes more because he has more institutional knowledge about running a parking division. Would that be a fair assessment?
No, I don't know if that's a correct assessment.
All right, so I was doing some evaluating, and I was looking at the revenue that's generated by the parking division, which is in excess of, Ms. Smart, what, 20,000 or $20 million? Is that correct? Over $20 million. Okay, and I was looking at the Department of Public Safety. I'm missing a page here. Okay, the Department of Public Safety generates $23 million plus a year. The Department of Public Safety has over 3,300 employees. The parking division has 160 employees. The Director of Public Safety has a Deputy Director of Public Safety. The Treasurer's Office have an Assistant Treasurer or a Deputy Treasurer. The Director of Public Safety manages probably 2/3 of the city's employees. And there's no chief of staff. There's no PR person. There's no communications director. There's no administrative person that does all the administrative functions. But the parking division has all of that. And I think it's a waste of taxpayers' money. I think if we're paying somebody $130,000 a year that comes from a wealth of experience running parking garages, because my understanding is Mr. Phillips ran parking garages in California or somewhere like that. Is that correct?
He has experience in California, correct?
He has experience running parking parking divisions, basically? right?
Complex, a parking
Okay.
complex.
And how many years of experience would you suggest?
For Carl?
Yeah, about. Oh, Carl, you here? Oh, would you please come to the mic? I didn't see you out in the audience. I hate to be talking about somebody and they're sitting right there. I apologize for that. Good morning. Distinguished board. Just right there. So how many years of parking experience do you have?
Probably about 15, 16.
15, 16 years. And do you feel you're more than capable of managing the parking division on your own? No answer to that. I'm sorry. That might put you in a tough situation. I believe that you are more than capable with 15 years experience of managing the parking division on your own. And I appreciate the work that you've been doing. You're very responsive whenever I have a question about something or issue with a constituent. And thank you for your service.
Thank you. Thank you.
To members of the committee, I have a concern about the level of executive staff that's in the parking division. I don't want to call it a slush fund, but there's a lot of money in the parking division. And that's why you can project $20 million, but only have a budget to operate with just over $16 million. And I will be making recommendations to eliminate the chief of staff, the deputy chief of staff position, the director of administration, the director of communications, and the PR assistant. The reason I would make these recommendations is, number one, the treasurer's office has a full-time treasurer. The treasurer's office has an assistant treasurer who's more than capable of handling the operations of the treasurer's office. I see no reason that the parking division needs a PR assistant and a communications director. The parking division has a need currently for a human resource manager or director, but does not have a need for a director of administration. And certainly, if you have a treasurer, an assistant treasurer, then you have a chief of staff, why in the world would you need a deputy chief of staff? That's overloading the system with a lot of executive staff that is not needed and very unheard of in any parking division. Again, the parking division generates about $20 million worth of revenue. The director, the public safety department generates $23 million in revenue. And you do not see this kind of staff.
You are not comparing apples to apples.
I'm talking.
But I just
I'm
want to
talking.
say that.
Madam
And
Treasurer,
I'm going to
with all
have
due
the people
respect.
stand up who you have decided
With
to
all
cut their
due respect,
positions
Miss-
so you can
with
look
all
them in the
due
face
respect.
and say that I'm going to eliminate your job.
With all due respect, please maintain some order. You're being very disrespectful, and I'm being very
Disrespectful
nice.
by telling people to their face that you're going to cut their jobs, that their positions aren't worthy, that they don't exist. Yeah, come on, come on, come on.
Madam Chair,
Come
you're
on.
out of order.
Come on.
You're out of order.
No, you are out of order.
Maintain some professionalism, please.
That's unprofessional for
asking
you
you.
to tell these people to their face that you're going to cut their positions, especially my chief of staff and the other positions that you've named.
Actually, it's more let's have some order. Have some order. Okay. We will not have any more outbursts. This will be your only warning. Do not ever do that again in this committee. Do not do it. Do not do it. It's disrespectful and it's out of order. And I'm asking you, do not clap and do not yell from the audience. We don't do that. And what's respectful is when you can tell somebody in their face what's going to happen than behind their back, okay? So, not only that, I'm making recommendations that legal services be cut in the budget down to $35,000. Now, the reason for that cut is that the City of St. Louis City Council's office can represent the parking division. Now, there are situations where there may be a conflict of interest in which the parking division will pay those legal fees with the approval of the parking commission. I'm also making recommendations to cut contractual services to $35,000. Now, the contractual services and the legal services can be amended at a later date by the parking commission. It's very unfortunate that the treasurer has taken the position that this is her office to do whatever she wants to do without or with minimal oversight. That is not how you do business. That is not how you spend the people's money. And it needs to stop. So all contracts that are current will be paid. If there are contracts that are open-ended, the recommendation is that they be terminated within 30 days or whatever the required amount of time, and that it will be rebidded or resolicited, so that if the service is needed, it will be provided. I'll take questions from the members of the committee based on my comments. And we will start with Alderwoman Murphy.
I have no questions at this time. I want to review what you said. And I am in concurrence with oversight in that. It's very important to me that, that an office have complete oversight from the proper authorities, because I do worry about the spending of the taxpayers' money, especially in these difficult fiscal times.
Alderman Bosley.
If I may address the crowd, please.
Go ahead.
One thing I would like to say to everyone sitting out there is nobody sitting behind a desk trying to figure out how to take people's jobs. I want you all to understand that this is not the only department that the city itself is looking at making cuts in. And I know everybody has a perspective on what's going on. We all are not, you know, we all are grown. So when it comes down to what's best for the city, I think we all need to look at everything in a well-rounded manner. We all have to be more involved in every department in the city and not just the departments that we work in, so we can have a better understanding of what's going on in the city as a whole. Once again, I want you all to really understand there are, you know, a lot of people right now who have their jobs on the line throughout the city because the city is going through budget cuts. You know, we have well, I don't want to go into numbers, but we have a deficit. We have issues, and everybody knows, you've been hearing it for years, that the city doesn't have any money. And then you heard, you know, we always are raising taxes. There's a lot going on with the city, and we all have to make a better effort collectively as far as getting involved to know exactly what's going on in our city before we get to a point to where we have all of you all in front of us and we're looking at cutting jobs and we're trying to figure out how to make that next buck. We're trying to figure out what to do the next 5 to 10 years to make up for what we're losing in our tax base, so we can keep people where they are working, so we don't have to figure out how to create jobs after losing jobs. That's a very important thing. So I want everybody to recognize that this is not the only department. We might be losing all of 14 of our NSOs, which are extremely important to everybody's well-being within the city, because they help keep city services going smoothly. I'm sure everybody's in here has called CSB before. Everybody in here has had an issue with weeds or crime or a lot of different issues. Our NSOs handle those issues. You all handle issues related to parking. So everybody has a job to do, and everybody's job is extremely important. So I do want you all to understand, nobody is thinking of your jobs as being unimportant. Everybody has a position to play, and if you weren't playing your position, then we wouldn't be in the room right now talking about money, because it wouldn't be here, because there wouldn't be people on the levels that you all work on bringing that revenue in. So you all are very important. The questions that I have, Mr. Chairman, in particular, when we were going through the actual positions that will be cut, I was trying to locate them here on Exhibit 2.
Second page.
It's on the second page. Okay. So could you run through those for me one more time?
Sure. The positions recommended to be cut is the chief of staff, starting at the top, the PR assistant, communications director, director of administration, and the deputy chief. I don't see
Not a
where the deputy
position.
chief of staff falls in on a flow chart, but I know it has been a budgeted line item.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. I was looking for, you said the Director of Administration, sir?
All the way to the left.
All the way to the left. Okay, Shirley. So is that, I'm missing the last one. You said we couldn't find it on the chart?
Deputy chief of staff, I can't find it on the flow chart.
There is no deputy chief of staff.
Okay. Is that is a position that's still open, though? It's just not one, so it's,
They moved it somewhere.
No, it's in park, as I said before, it's in parking operations. It's a parking project facilitator or something like that. Projects program coordinator,
Projects Program Coordinator.
right, reports to Carl Phillips now.
Projects Program Coordinator. Is that on it? So he reports directly to Carl Phillips. Okay, so the question I have, if I'm making eggs. Okay, so I think a lot of us in the room, and even some people who work for the Treasury's Department, I like to say I have worked for the Treasury's Department before. So I myself have had questions, and I'm sure people who work for the Treasury's Department, just people in general, are always asking kind of where the money is going, what are these different positions, you know, what role these people in these different positions play, you know, and how effective they are, and, you know, exactly what do they do in pertaining to parking. So the questions that I do have are, number one, if we can talk to the individuals who we are talking about cutting, are they all in the room?
Yes, they are.
I would like to ask them, if we can, one at a time, exactly what it is they do within the parking division, and what do they do on day-to-day services, and how to do, you know, what it is that they do to bring in and help bring in the revenue or sustain what we bring in yearly.
All the positions mentioned, all the positions in this department are essential. Nobody is a ghost employee. Nobody comes to work every day and reads the paper. Everybody has an essential part to play in this office. And the positions, if the positions that are cut, so a lot of it, you know, we have turned a lot of attention to constituent services, and as well as, you know, an out-facing view to the public. So we do a lot of community programming, and a lot of this happens with the assistance of all of the people that are on the chopping block, so to speak. And so if you want to speak to them, if they will stand, if they are here. Shirley, Sarah, Debbie.
So, and the reason being is this is a public hearing and we are on record. So there will be people who will get a chance to view this video or might be watching right now and get a chance to really see what's going on with the city. I think it's important for people to start getting involved, and it's hard to do that when people don't know what exactly we're talking about. So even with these different positions, it's hard for people to get an understanding of exactly what role they play. So I just wanted them to come on record and say this is what they do. So we all can get a general understanding if, cutting out our PR assistant or our communications director, how does that affect everybody on the lower tier,
Okay, come on up.
Alderman Bosley, and I can start, and I guess we're all slightly unprepared in the sense that no one had consulted us about potentially cutting our jobs until Alderman Boyd raised this issue. So it's regretful that we have to have this conversation in this context.
Understood.
But I'm proud of our employees and the work they do on a day-to-day basis. I, as Chief of Staff, am the person who all the department heads report to. Parking constitutes the majority of our office. Yes, we do work with Treasury Operations and Office of Financial Empowerment, but the vast majority of our time and employees and resources are dedicated to parking. So if we talk about my day-to-day consists primarily of ensuring that our divisions, primarily our parking divisions, are on task, on schedule, and that can range from, like I said, helping to implement new procedures in our garages, looking at improving our event parking internally, and working with our IT department. And that's where I come in as Chief of Staff. There are several initiatives that require more than one department. So when we look at going to event parking with scanners and other technology, that often requires IT. It requires fiscal because we have to make sure that the processes are safe for getting money. And it also affects IT and human resources because we have to have internal safeguards in place for our employees when we deal with cash handling issues. So while Mr. Phillips does, like I say, have a day-to-day part in parking, it takes more than one person to deal with a lot of the large initiatives that we deal with. Also try and promote our parking. So we have validation programs in the Central West End that we're trying to induce more people and more businesses to use our current parking facilities. Work on any kind of internal matter, work with outside counsel on legal issues. Alderman Boyd offered the fact that the city councilor can help us with legal issues. That's actually not the case. They've informed us that earlier this year that they cannot work with us on legal matters because they are adverse to our office. That's why we've experienced a higher amount of legal expenses this year because the city councilor cannot
Can I cut you off real quick? Sorry, I don't mean to be disrespectful.
Sure. I want to be respectful of everyone's time, and if
Yes,
you would
sir.
like to hear more about.
Well, no, it's not that.
Sure.
I just wanted to make sure that we're staying on the
Sure.
the actual question, so when people are reviewing it, and I also don't want to bring up other questions that
Sure.
might arise from, the committee from that. Yeah, so I just want to stay on kind of on task. We all can get a really good idea of exactly what you do. So as we go down the line, we'll see how all these positions kind of intertwine. Because it's important to know, how you affect from the top, because people at the bottom, everything's a ripple. So.
Sure. So I would just say broaden it by saying I help implement and develop parking, long-term parking strategies and make sure that our department heads are carrying out those goals from a parking perspective, but also deal with administrative issues and incidentally treasury issues or other issues or outward-facing issues when the treasurer can't work on them, so interfacing with other departments or other private folks. But like I said, I haven't had a chance to really think through this issue because I didn't know my job was on the line this morning. So I will allow another employee to kind of provide an overview, and I think this probably won't be adequate to give the full color of what I and my employees do. I know Ms. Ruchik, although it says she's Director of Administration, she puts out several fires on a day-to-day basis, and it's
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't mean to cut you off either, but why don't we go ahead and have the other staff members come up and, as the Alderman requested. Thank you.
okay. Ms. Ruchik. And I guess while we're waiting, I would also note for the record that although spending for personnel is up 2% this year, it's still down 6% from 2 years ago. So this notion that our personnel costs are escalating when you contextualize it with where we were 2 years ago is actually not the case. We're still down 6% from 2 fiscal years.
Okay, so let me make it clear based on that statement. No one has said that the personnel costs are escalating, so let's be clear with that, okay? Ms. Ruchik.
Good morning, Alderman Boyd and Commission members. Thank you for listening to us today. I, too, was not aware that my job was being considered eliminated. I have answered many Sunshine Law requests and provided much information, many documents to Alderman Boyd. So I would be glad to provide you with all our job descriptions for all the members of the executive team that you are talking about eliminating our positions. To tell you a little bit about myself, I've been with the office since 2008. I was initially hired under Mr. Larry Williams. I started here. I was brought on board in the payroll department to implement our NovaTime time and attendance payroll system. From that position, I was promoted to more of a payroll person. From there, I was promoted to Director of Administration. So when the new administration came on board, I was interviewed, and the new treasurer chose to keep me as Director of Administration and also basically promote me to the executive team. My day-to-day responsibilities include so many things, from making sure that the office is running, in an organized manner every day. I oversee all HR and payroll responsibilities. So every 2 weeks I approve payroll, I review variance reports, I approve and review all overtime, I compare what has been finalized back from the comptroller's office to our information in our NovaTime system. It's a time and attendance software program that we use to track time and attendance accruals, those type of things. I am also administrator for that position. So every employee is required to clock in some sort of way. And the system then tracks accruals such as medical leave, vacation leave, that type of thing. So I'm administrator of that position. Program. Additionally, in regards to HR, so I will get involved on any kind of HR issues that are more than just like a time and attendance issue. So if there's any allegations of any kind of perhaps an EEOC complaint type of issue, so if an employee feels that they are feeling discriminated against, if there's perhaps an allegation of some kind of a sexual or offensive comments being made, at that point I get involved in those types of investigations. I conduct pre-termination hearings. So all full-time employees pursuant to our handbook are entitled to a pre-termination hearing, so I do conduct those hearings. Ultimately, a decision is made if somebody will remain employed by the Treasurer's Office, and I get involved in terminations, unfortunately. Let me see, I'm the custodian of records. So more recently, I've been quite busy. And in fact, a lot of my time is spent these days responding to Sunshine Law requests and providing different documents. But over the years, I've probably responded to, I don't know, well over 100, possibly 200 requests. I've been custodian of records ever since 2008 when I started working for the office under the previous treasurer, Mr. Williams. I am also the contact person and the liaison between our office and Gershman Properties. So as you all are aware, we have different properties. We have garages that have retail space. If you're familiar with 7th Pine, we have maybe 6 retail businesses there on the ground level. So I am the contact person for Gershman Properties. I also participate and assist with Michelle in approving our property budget, which I don't know what the numbers are, but it is quite a task to go through. I also approve and review all leases, so anytime we enter into contracts. Right now, we do have a vacant space in our Shoto building. So I assist with, making sure Gershman has access to the space, assist in negotiations. Once a informed recommendation can be made, I do bring that to the executive team. As you know, I'm a part of the executive team, so every Wednesday I participate in executive team meetings, and I participate in decision-making really for all decisions for the parking division, and quite often for the treasury office. So.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mark. But let me ask you a question while you're there, because you made a comment about the responding to numerous sunshine requests made by myself, which you're 100% correct, and I appreciate when you do respond expeditiously. But let me ask you this. I am a member of the Parking Commission, correct?
You are, and I am up here talking about my job.
Right.
And my job duties. So can I finish my job duties, please, Alderman Boyd?
I think we got it, and I'm impressed with what you do. So
I've only put like half of it out there. May I continue?
But we don't have all day.
Okay,
and I
but-
appreciate
okay.
what you said.
Can I also let you know the legal work I do? So I'm a licensed attorney.
Okay,
Give me the opportunity, please. I'm a licensed attorney, so not only do I do the administrative duties, but I review contracts, help draft contracts.
Ms. Ruckett, Ms. Ruckett, I'm going to
Accidents.
ask
Our
you.
office does not lean on the city councilor's office.
I'm going to
In
ask
fact,
you to stop right now.
the city councilor's
I'm going
office
to
is
ask you
refusing to
stop.
represent us on parking tickets in the circuit court. So,
So you're not going to stop.
I'm sorry.
So you're not
One
going to
last thing.
stop. You're not going to stop. I'm the
Not
chairman
mean
of
to
this
be
committee, and I've asked you to stop speaking, and you're not going to stop. Is that correct?
I'm stopping.
Thank you. Now, let me ask you a question again. Being a member of the Parking Commission, and you do the sunshine request, and you are a lawyer, why would a member of the Parking Commission need to do a sunshine request if they're part of the oversight
No,
body?
Alderman Boyd, with all due respect, I wish that it wouldn't have to be that way. However, because of the contentious relationship that you have with this office, unfortunately, that is the way that my supervisors have decided that this is how it has to be handled.
Thank you.
I would nothing more than to have phone conversations, but Alderman Boyd, last week you got contentious with myself. Every committee member here was CC'd along with the Julian Bush and Mike Garvin.
Yeah, right, because you were out of order.
I am always professional. You can ask every person in this room. I am one of the most professional people in this office, and I respect everybody in this room, and I really believe that everybody in this room that knows me respects me.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
So,
Anyone else want to? Sarah Westbrook?
I'm here. How should we start this?
And can you just take 3 short minutes and just give us a good overview? You don't have to go into detail about everything.
Okay. I don't have a timer, but if it goes overboard, you let me know. Okay, I'm Sarah Westbrooks. I serve as the Public Relations Assistant for the City of St. Louis Treasurer's Office, which also includes the Office of Financial Empowerment. I started my position this year on January 8th, 2018. So an overview of my position is under communications as well as administrative assistant work directly for Treasurer Tashara Jones. What I bring to the table in my role and daily duties for the job is creation of content. That also goes for our social media as well as for our website and even for publication distribution that you will see for our flyers. I have graphic design experience and background in that, so I do create the look for our publications that go out as well as review of content to make sure information is ready to be published. I also serve directly under Ms. Jones as assisting with her travel, scheduling meetings for the entire executive team, and also being the frontline person when there is communication that comes to the office to field that or vet it really to see if that is someone that needs to meet with the treasurer, meet with the team, and also what their purpose is.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
No, ma'am, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And looks like the last person is Deborah Johnson.
Good morning, Alderman Boyd and members of the committee.
Morning.
I'm Debbie Johnson. I'm Director of Communications for the Treasurer's Office. My duties also include the Parking Division, Treasury Operations, and the Office of Financial Empowerment. I oversee all internal and external communications for the office, including media relations, crisis communications, social media management, speech writing, and community outreach.
Okay. Thank you.
Let me ask you, crisis communications? We're
Yes.
talking about the parking division. What kind of crisis do we experience in the parking division?
I think we're experiencing one right now.
You know what? That I would agree with you in a way, but prior to today, what type of crisis have you dealt with the parking?
I deal with all kinds of crises in the parking division, employee issues, equipment issues, to name a few.
Employment issues. And, I mean, when I think of a communications director, I think of someone that interacts with the public, like maybe the media.
I'm sorry, sir, could you repeat
When
the
I think of a
question?
communications director, I kind of think of somebody that interacts with the media.
Crisis communications is part of a media
So give me
strategy.
the last incident where there was a crisis that you had to deal with the media.
I'll be dealing with one when we leave here.
That's not what I'm asking you. And you know what? This is not over with today.
I know it's not.
Okay, so people can change their minds. This has not been voted on. It's been put out there. But being rude, it doesn't help. Okay?
Okay.
So I'm asking you a question. What have you interacted with the public that was a crisis in the parking division?
Equipment failures. We had an incident over the weekend where a customer was parked in a lot and could not get out of the lot because the gate was unable to raise.
So the media was called?
Media was called.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
One more thing. Thank you all very much. This is a very sensitive subject for everybody, but I ask you all and encourage everyone, please be extremely respectful. Regardless of what your position is or whom you are, this is a committee, and this is the chairman of our committee. So I would ask that you all please be respectful when we ask you to come up. I know that emotions are high, and we all deal in customer service, am I right? So we deal with people on a regular basis who are having a disgruntled day, people who might not be, on the right side of the bed this morning. So with that being said, I'd ask that everyone please be respectful and, utilize those communication skills that you utilize every single day while you're out on the streets doing your job. Thank you all very much.
Okay. Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderwoman Martin still here?
She just
Okay. All right. Just a moment. I'll get to you. Just give me a moment. Mr. Phillips, could you come back up, please? So, hearing what the other staff members had to say, I'm now very curious as to what you do.
What I think?
What you do.
Oh, what I-
It seemed like some people said they deal with all the contracts and the public relations stuff. So how do you interact with, and I see the flow chart, but help me understand what do you do on a regular basis to manage parking?
Yes, sir. I'd like to say that basically it's a team strategy. It's dictated from the treasurer down. So it's the elected officials, the treasurer. She dictates the strategy to the executive staff via the chief of staff. Okay, so it's a collaborative effort. I've got 5 or 6 directors. Obviously, they're on the flow chart, but it's a team game, and we have approximately 160 employees in the park division. But these are essential jobs. Everyone works together. I work with Shirley. Jared directs the flow through the executive committee, and I work with Shirley, Michelle, Debbie. So it's a team effort, and the PEOs.
Let me ask you this. When it comes to the real estate management, so someone wants to become a tenant in one of the garages. What is your role in that?
So, well, so I co-manage that with Shirley. The previous role was done by the facilities manager. When the facilities manager left, Shirley being an attorney, capable attorney, I asked her to assist with that. And so primarily Shirley writes contracts. That part was under facilities, but it's basically directed by Shirley Ruchek, integrates with the property managers, which are Gershman.
Okay. Let me ask you this question. In your prior experience running a parking division, did you have access to this level of staff?
No.
Okay, thank you. So not having access to this level of staff, you were still able to carry out your duties to the best of your ability to run and manage that facility. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Phillips while he's here? Any members of the committee? Alderman Bosley?
In the other garages that you have managed and been a part of the administration there, what were the general revenues that I guess that you dealt with on a yearly basis compared to the revenues that we deal with here?
Well, it was state of California, so they were much larger facilities. So it was you know, it's.
Can you give me an estimate? Well, it doesn't have to be, you know, but we're talking, you know, 50 million, 60 million.
It was in the millions.
In the millions?
It's been a while, but it was in the millions. Yeah.
Would you say it's double our budget, triple?
We're in the same neighborhood, you know, the Coliseum, those type of facilities. So.
Understood, especially with a larger population, but I'm just asking a general question. Of course, every city is different, you know, dealing with different people, and everybody has different issues, and we are, you know, struggling city, but the point is, you know, just trying to get an idea of what it is that they do as far as bringing in more revenue versus personnel, and, you know, what we can look at in the future if we are talking about making changes, you know, how do we facilitate that?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I'm going to see if Alderwoman Martin had another question.
Yes, sir. Seeing that you are the parking administrator and you kind of have a variety of jobs as we all do, it seems like kind of everybody plays, you know, a few different roles. Are there any improvements that you can think of that we can do within the city of St. Louis that we have not done as far as looking at ways to reduce costs, you know, in ways that you may have done with your previous experience?
Well, from a budgetary standpoint,
Yes, sir.
I think that from a budgetary standpoint, that the treasurer and Chairman Boyd could sit in a room and figure this out. It's my take. That's what you're asking me.
No, definitely wasn't asking that. But I agree with you, though.
You weren't asking that?
No, sir. No, sir.
Cut costs?
Well, yeah, basically just to improve, and well, everything in any job, in any department is always about enhancement. You know, we want to look at what we can do to decrease costs and increase profit, always, and in any, you know, or at least sustain. So, you know, of course, we want to get to a larger population one day. That's everybody's goal who lives in the city and everybody who works in the city. We all want to get, you know, more tourist attractions. We just want more revenue. The more people we have coming into the city, the more, you know, revenue we get. So I'm just saying, looking forward, is there anything that you've seen that we can improve in within this city, coming from a city with a larger population who has, who is kind of where we are working towards going?
Yeah, we're bringing in more technology at the keel. We're going to come in with event scanners, as Jared said, Chief of Staff said. We're going to run a pilot program to look at the event scanners at that operation, bring that over to the Justice Center, look at that over there, and eventually implement it in all the garages, couples. We don't have events at the Argyle, but so we're going to become more efficient. You know, we have a technology department, an IT department. We're state of the art in the country. Only a few cities have IT departments, so that lets us implement a lot of things faster.
How long have we had that IT department?
2 or 3 years.
2 or 3 years.
3 years. Yeah.
3 years. Okay. Awesome.
One of the few cities in the country that has that.
Understood. So besides Park Louis, what other new technologies have we implemented? And this might be a question for, I'm not sure if
IT director. Jerry Walker. You can answer.
Good morning. So what was the question again?
What technologies have we implemented within the last 3 years since the...
Man, that's a lot.
I love it.
That's a lot.
Yes, sir.
So before I got there, there was no technology department. So getting there, my charge was to take a look at what the parking had and what they were actually getting ready to bring in, and how to build this IT department to be able to implement technology faster, more efficiently, and so to be able to make take data and then make decisions based off that. So a lot of those parking technology, first and foremost, we had to become PCI compliant because they installed new credit card machines everywhere. So the very first thing, which was huge, was the PCI compliance part of it, because without that, we would be very vulnerable to attacks, lawsuits, and things of that nature. That was done network-wide, and it was a huge feat, and we are certified in that too. So you could actually look us up and see that the City of St. Louis Treasurer's Office Parking Division is PCI certified. So that was one of the first things we did, but we've installed new parking technology to do data stuff, to be able to do it electronically, remotely. We've implemented.
What are we speaking about? I'm sorry.
So both parking on street and off street. So off street parking garages, we've implemented new technology that allows us to be able to access the parking gates and see real time on what's going on. The whole point of everything we were doing was try to eliminate as much cash as possible, and to be able to track that with ease, which is one of the reasons why parking revenue has, basically kind of skyrocketed from that.
Are we talking about the software that was utilized to
It was software and
implement?
hardware.
Software
And hardware was implemented. The new technology that was implemented on street, that provided us with a number of different web portals and technology portals to be able to pull and see that. We've now implemented something where we can pull those revenue numbers from all the different places we're getting them from and into one dashboard and see year over year, month over month, with hotspots throughout the city. So it shows us a city map to say, here's an area that's doing well. Why isn't this area doing, or an area that's not doing, why not? And then be able to glean from there better decisions that need to be made for the parking administrator and things that he needs. So there's a lot. I just got to keep thinking about more. You're talking about the new websites. We had to implement new websites, new office, back office tools to be able to provide some of this. We have 3 new websites. We have OFE, STL Treasure, and Park Louis. The IT department is responsible for the administration of it. The communications department is responsible for the content and the management of the content that goes in it. So we provide them the ability to put the stuff in and an ease of use to be able to provide that information. So I can keep going on. There's so much technology that we've been able to implement in the past 3 years. Even to the point now, the CIO here is actually asking us to start working with them to implement some of the PCI technology for them. They really want to start putting this into different departments, and so we're getting ready to do a proof of concept for one of the departments to see if we can do it, and then move from there, and then kind of make that more of a treasury side of it, so different departments can provide PCI compliance and credit card usage. So there's just a whole lot that we've done, in the past 3 years for parking.
That's awesome. Well, I know technology has definitely continually been the wave of the future. So,
yeah.
And it's something we definitely need to be looking at as far as the city, because we're extremely behind on a lot of things when it comes to technological advancement. So, do you see at any point in the future, or of course you're going to continue to implement different programs to help make the city a little more efficient, or more efficient in general, do you see in the near future at some point in time us getting ahead of the actual cost of implementing these things, and us having a gross at some point in time from all of the technologies that we've implemented over time?
Yeah. So definitely, it's a young department, so you have to put some into it to begin with, but there was so much old old
Infrastructure.
technology infrastructure that as we were changing them, we're still we're still at the point of reevaluating what's needed. And so one of the things we did was we purposely did not put personnel quickly into the IT department. And when we did it, we were like, well, let's hold up. And as the technology grows, then we'll figure out whether or not what we actually need from there. But I would say within probably, because I think we have one more garage, and then at that point, I think we'll be pretty much to technology point. And then from there, it's now how do we take what we have and do more data analytics.
I could add in terms of the necessity of IT, we operate in a space where we compete with private companies, so being able to take credit cards isn't really an option for us. It's a necessity to operate in a marketplace where we operate with both public entities and private companies that have garages that take credit cards. So
Understood.
So to that point, we're looking at probably within the next 2 years, we'll see where technology we'll be looking at it differently. Instead of buying these big things for, it'll be more of maintenance at that point. And then anytime a project comes up where it'd be more of like data analytics and stuff like that.
Understood. Is it safe to say that one day, because you were looking at personnel at some point in time, that one day you will implement personnel into these systems and that will become a part of what you utilize or what you oversee as far as IT?
You say, what do you mean?
The personnel, files, and just personnel in general, being able to, because I'm sure there's a system for personnel right now that isn't tapped into yours. Or do we not have a computer system for personnel right now?
So I don't know about the city, but internally, yes. So we've already moved to document management. So that's another thing we're doing too. So we have currently set up some workflows in our document management that we are getting ready to actually start utilizing within HR, where HR can come in with personnel, put information in. So stuff like this, like let's say you come in with an application, because one of the biggest problems that HR has is keeping people for events and personnel, so there's some turnover right there. So what we have is a document management system where they can put the application in and it gets held in there, and then hopefully get a number of applications where they can just type in the position they're looking for, and they get these applicants that put in there and actually can pull from that. So that is piece of it that we are doing now. So document management is one.
Understood. And the reason I asked is because one of the positions that we are talking about as far as cutting is part of administration, and that is part of personnel. And I was going to ask, are you all working together? Are you teaching personnel what's necessary for the future? So, once again, this isn't the last time this conversation will come up, nor any conversation in the city as far as jobs being cut, because, budget cuts are, are
and absolutely. That is a part of working with Shirley on that direction, on what needs to happen. Because, even when we moved to Nova Time, because she, again, that's something she does. So she was like, hey, we've gotten to this point.
And Nova Time is?
Nova Time is the time and attendance application. So they got it to a point, but they didn't have technology. Once we came in, it was like, great, we need to move it here. And then, according to the requirements that she needs, we've then said, okay, here it is. And then from there, she helped implement it and help put it in, because you have to have that other side of it. Whenever you implement any type of technology, it's not solely up to the IT people to turn around and say, this is what you need. It's more of, tell me your business requirements, and then let's implement this together so that you know exactly what's being done and that you can actually move forward with it and utilize it in the way that's most beneficial for your department.
Understood. And once again, the reason you are, in my eyes, an important part of the process is because at some point in time, everybody who we're speaking about, the chief of staff, our PR assistant, communications director, everybody uses a computer.
Correct.
And with everything working towards being interconnected, it's important that you all are having those conversations so
Absolutely.
down the line we understand how efficient we are and how efficient we are working, because we do need to look at ways in creating more money for the city to put into general revenue, and just in general creating more funding for the city.
Right.
And that's in, once again, every department. So I really appreciate you.
Thank you. Any other? Good.
Alderman Martin.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I think I'll just preface this, but I think at some point, and as Alderman Bosley said, I mean, it is a tough position to be in, and it's an even tougher position to be in if your job is being cut. This is not a fun part of being an elected official at all, but I think everyone needs to come to the table on how we can increase general revenue, and that's every department, that's the Board of Aldermen for that matter, on how we can better utilize our staff and whatnot. But I guess my question is there a plan going forward on, say, on phasing out some positions if someone retires, if someone leaves for whatever reason? Is there a plan on maybe how you can combine some positions or eliminate positions, as we really are in a budget crisis?
Sure, and we can evaluate that. I will say that, or remind the committee that 2 years ago we eliminated several positions because we thought we were in jeopardy of exceeding our budget. So we actually went through a pretty painstaking exercise 2 years ago and looked at people who were retiring and people whose positions could be phased out. So we went through that exercise 2 years ago, and as stated before, as a result, are down 6% from, I think, 2015 on personnel costs. So it is something that we have done before, and we can continue to evaluate that with retirements going forward. This certainly is kind of an abrupt context for that conversation, but
Sure.
It is something that we've done before, and like I said, we're down 6% from a personnel standpoint. And to your point about contributing more money to the general fund, it's something that our office is more than willing to talk to have more conversations about. The treasurer's first year of office, the parking division gave about $500,000. This past year, it was $1.6 million. So we've done our best to give money to the general fund, but we're more than willing to engage in additional conversations. But like I said, I would highlight the fact that we've had difficult conversations about phasing people out before today.
I'd also like to add to that, even when I took office in 2013, there was also several positions that were phased out due to the fact that they were ghost employees. So we had several people who weren't even showing up to work in the prior administration. So we did an exorcism of sorts and eliminated people who were not coming to work, and even people who were coming to work and not working. We did an extensive review and survey of everybody in the office to make sure that those who are here are working and are essential to the operations of the organization.
All right, thank you.
I just want to go back to something Mr. Boyd said. And first of all, it's very true that since Ms. Jones has been treasurer, more money has come over to the city's general revenue. But it's also true that parking fines have been increased by 50%. So if you increase the sale of your product by 50%, naturally you have a larger profit. So when you do the profit sharing, the person that you're sharing with naturally gets more. But the $1.6 million, and that was an issue that I had earlier this year, is that state statute currently, if we operate on a state statute, which again the city council's opinion is that the statutes are unconstitutional. But notwithstanding that, $1.6 million was transferred in October, I believe, to the city's general revenue fund. However, it was transferred unlawfully because the parking commission had not authorized and approved the transfer. And those are some of the issues that I have with the governance of the parking division, is that the parking division seems to operate outside the law and creates their own narrative about how the law is to be interpreted, which is basically very simple. And so, since you're there, Mr. Boyd, explain to me how the money was transferred without authorization from the parking commission.
So to give some context to the committee, the state statute that governs the transfer of funds from the parking division to the general fund stipulates that we're able to give up to 40% of our net increase, or net revenue, change in net position. So our budget contemplates giving that full 40% of that change in net position. So when we pass our budget, it's contemplated that that full 40% is given, and that's been the case for Treasurer Jones' entire tenure. So we have given the full 40% every year, and any deviation of that would probably require some parking commission oversight. So you take issue, I guess, with us giving the full 40%, or do you take issue with the procedure for giving as much money as we can?
The issue is the procedure. Now, naturally and certainly, I want to see more than 40%, but governed under state statute, you can only give 40%. However, the state statute does clearly say, with the approval of the Parking Commission, as well as the Parking Commission shall do budget modifications, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so, but in the past, the Parking Division, you know, you as Chief of Staff, have done budget modifications without authority from the Parking Commission.
We have done some transfers within line items, but for small things. For large line items outside, for large transfers that include multiple line items, as was the case, like I said, when we almost exceeded our budget, that was modified through the Parking Commission.
But the statute says all budget modifications, whether they're small or large. I mean, it didn't say if it's under a certain amount, right? Okay.
Speaks to budget modifications.
So that has been going on, and again, you didn't speak to, you kind of went around the transfer of the funds, and certainly the state statute talks about the 40% up to 40%, but again, it's the Parking Commission. So let's go to a big item, the $2 million that was transferred to Metro. There was no Parking Commission meeting done.
That's actually not the case. There are Parking Commission minutes. Lauren Trigger, I think, was at the Parking Commission meeting when we passed the resolution that authorized the $2 million. That resolution was done in conjunction with the City Councilor's office and the mayor at the time, and there is a resolution that I'm pretty sure you were provided.
It was dated July of 2016.
But it was both discussed in the Parking Commission and ratified by the Parking Commission.
It was ratified, if I believe I'm correct, it was ratified in the August meeting by being referenced to the approval, but the date of the resolution was the 6th of July. It was July something. So you can't go back and retroactive by putting it in the meetings and make it legal. I mean, there was no Parking Commission meeting, and from my understanding, the resolution was walked around to each commissioner to get their signature put on it. Is that correct? You don't remember?
Don't
That's
recall,
okay.
but it was approved by the Parking Commission. It was discussed in open meeting. It was not something that was hidden
That's
from the
not
public.
true.
There were press releases.
That is absolutely not true. That
Members that, so you may take issue with the actual expenditure, but the expenditure was both discussed in an open meeting and promoted that we were discussing this in an open meeting, and in fact ratified by the Parking Commission. So I don't.
And what meeting was that?
I don't have this information in front of me, but the Parking Commission ratified the MetroLink study money. So I'm just.
They signed off on a resolution. I have a copy of the resolution. I have a copy of the minutes. The minutes reflect, I don't want to quote because I may misquote, but it says something because it's your voice in the minutes that talked about that they approved back in July. The problem with that is there was no Parking Commission meeting in July. So if there was no Parking Commission meeting in July, how could it have been discussed in a public forum except for that particular meeting when it was brought about and talked about? Right?
I would have to go back and look at the notes from this meeting, but I do, if I'm not mistaken, the Parking Commission did provide some type of approval both during a meeting, as stated, and with a resolution.
And the $2 million is more meritorious. I mean, I certainly supported the $2 million, but what I didn't support after becoming a commissioner was the process. So I'm just speaking to how business has been done in the parking division at will outside the law. And I think we need to start doing things within local and state ordinances. And in the last Parking Commission meeting, I said I want to make sure that the 40% that's transferred this year is in accordance with the new ordinance that was done last year. The comment from the treasurer was absolutely not. So what that says to me, the message to me is, I don't care what that ordinance says, I'm going to do business as usual, and that's not right.
No, the ordinance, what I'm saying is we're going to operate under state law. Parking division is a division under the state law, under 82, 485, and 487. That lawsuit is still not final, so we are operating under status quo, under the current state law, and we will transfer the 40% of the change in that position.
However, the state law does say that the parking division is governed under local laws as well. Is that correct?
As you may know, local laws can supplement state law, but they don't supersede state law.
Right. And so the city made an interpretation, a different interpretation than the formula that was being used. And so since we've created a new formula for the 40%, the expectation is that new formula based on local law within the state statute boundaries would be used. And,
Well,
and the treasurer is saying, no, we're going to operate as status quo.
I think there's an issue as to whether or not that law conflicts with the state law. So that's where the difference
But the
comes
city
in.
councilor's office has supported that. The mayor signed off on it. It was vetted through the city councilor's office. And at the end of the day, this is the city of St. Louis. The parking division is part of the city of St. Louis. And if there's an opportunity to give more money to the general revenue fund, it mind boggles me that any staff of the parking division would challenge and would fight giving the city more money when the city has a $1.1 billion budget and is either laying people off or not hiring people in critical positions. We're all one body. We should all be working together as a team. I remember asking the treasurer last year at a July meeting, if we could find a way to give more money to the city general revenue, would she support that? And she said yes. We found a way to do it by using the exact language in the state statute to create the formula for the 40%. And it's being met with resistance. That is not working together. The parking division does not belong to the treasurer's office per se. The court ruling clearly says the parking division is city government. It's not state government. It's not a county office. It's the city of St. Louis municipal government entity, right?
I don't know if there was a question in there, but I will address some of the issues. The treasurer's office takes the position that we are not opposed to finding ways to help the city, and as I stated, we've found ways to help the city through giving the city more money. However, we want to make sure those ways comply with state law, and we're more than willing to have conversations about that. Suing people probably doesn't help those conversations, but our office is certainly committed to making sure that we can help the city and have those conversations.
Mr. Boyd, you saying that we're willing to look into and explore, in my experience with working with that office, means it's not going to happen. And so I've had the opportunity to work with the office for at least a year now. And some things that have been brought up and brought to your attention about modifying or changing policy to go in a different direction that would benefit the citizens have went nowhere. Because the position of that office is to do what it wants to do and does not have to answer to anybody. That's a problem. That is a great problem. And if you stand there and say you've looked at ways to give more money to the city of St. Louis General Revenue, please elaborate on that statement. What have you done to give more money to the general revenue?
I said as stated earlier, we've committed to increasing our transfer to the general revenue fund, but like I said, we're willing to have additional conversations. It's difficult to have them in antagonistic settings such as these, but I said we'd be willing to, like I said, continue to have more conversations about how we can help the city. You mentioned about the lack of accountability, and I will remind you that the treasurer is an elected official, so she is accountable to all 300,000+ citizens of St. Louis. So this notion that there is no accountability, I think, is not the case.
Oh, it's absolutely the case. And let me tell you something. The 307,000 citizens of the city of St. Louis have no say-so except at the voting booth on holding the treasurer accountable. Who the treasurer must be immediately accountable to is this legislative body. That is who have the fiduciary responsibility to hold all elected officials accountable. Alderman Middlebrook. No. Okay, so I talked about what I like to cut. But let's talk about what I like to increase. So the city is in a budget crisis and a deficit, and there are positions of NSOs to lose their jobs. The NSOs, which is NIPs, whatever they call them, neighborhood improvement specialists, they are the eyes and ears for the community. And people, especially in North St. Louis, cannot afford to lose their neighborhood improvement specialists. People that represent very challenging neighborhoods cannot afford to lose the neighborhood improvement specialists. Now, can some of them be improved on their performance? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, those are critical positions. And I will be recommending $800,000 of parking division revenue that would go through that major projects line item, go to a funding Department of Public Safety neighborhood improvement. The city toll works very closely with the parking division. And they do a lot of towing. As a matter of fact, they do 100% of the towing. Is that correct?
Yes, after a car's booted.
And the towing division is in desperate need of new trucks. So I'm recommending $250,000 for 2 new vehicles for city towing. I'm also recommending $6 million to be transferred from the unrestricted reserve fund to the city's general revenue reserve fund. Now, we'll now open those comments up. First, I'll take your response, Madam Treasurer, and then we'll open up to the committee.
As I understand it, all of these recommendations have to go back through the Parking Commission to be approved.
That's not true.
How do you know?
Because the Board of Aldermen gets to modify the Parking Commission budget.
But they can't approve, they can't move money from our unrestricted reserves without approval of the Parking Commission.
Really? Where does it say that at?
Where does it say that you can from this place?
It says that you can modify the budget.
This is not in the budget. Reserves are not in the budget.
So
this
are you
is the
saying,
operating budget.
Are you saying that you don't want to transfer the $6 million?
I'm not saying that.
Well, let me ask you.
I'm saying that this has to be approved by the Parking Commission first. You made a motion in the Parking Commission 2 weeks ago to do this, and it was not seconded.
Okay.
So these changes that you are proposing now still have to go back to the Parking Commission to be approved.
Not true.
That's your opinion.
That's the city council's opinion. I'm not.
That's the city councilor's opinion.
Let me be clear. Those who know me know that I don't like to engage in any activity if I don't feel that I have the facts to do what I want to do. And so I've gotten the opinion of the city council's office that this is lawful to do this. And if you're saying that you're resistant to it, just say it. You're not for giving $6 million over the city general revenue to help those reserves so that the city can have a better credit rating.
So, again, my position is that it has to be approved by the Parking Commission.
Are you in favor of transferring $6 million of unrestricted reserves to the city general revenue reserves?
Again, it has to be approved by the Parking Commission.
That's not the question.
And that's my answer, and I'm sticking to it.
Are you in favor of $800,000 being transferred to the
That
Department of
has to
Public
go
Safety.
back to the Parking Commission to be approved.
Maybe you should go back and read the state statute, because that's not true.
It is a budget modification, and it has to be approved by the Parking Commission. Didn't we just go through all of the statutes? You just said that the Parking Commission does all of the budget modifications. This is the Streets Committee, not the Parking Commission. So any budget modifications have to go back to the Parking Commission to be approved.
Let me ask you this, Treasurer. What's the point of this bill being heard in committee today?
State law says that since 1990, that the budget of the Parking Division has to go through the Streets, Traffic, and Refuse Committee.
And says it may be amended.
That's the case?
Okay, so I'm clear then. So we should both be clear that this committee has a right to amend the Parking Commission's recommended budget.
I don't agree.
But you just say it.
I don't agree.
You prefer that we not. But the state statute clearly says that it can be amended by the Board of Aldermen.
Well, I would like to appeal to the members of the committee not to approve these budget modifications because they are decreasing essential staff and eliminating essential staff. And all of these changes have not been, no one's talked to anyone in our staff about this, so that's what I would appeal to the members of the committee to do.
And let me say on no one's talked to anyone on your staff. That's by your choice. And let's be
No,
clear.
that's by your choice because you entered into a lawsuit. I extended an olive branch to you when you took this position in April of 2017. And then by June or July, you decided with a conscious decision to enter into a lawsuit against the office and against the very body that you sit on. So you have caused all of this drama and confusion since last year. If you didn't enter the lawsuit, that told me that you broke the olive branch that I extended to you in half over your knee. So I have tried to, so you have put us in a position to have to communicate in this way.
Okay, so the lawsuit came about, but why does that stop the commission from functioning until the lawsuit
Because
is
it is
settled?
a conflict of interest for you to sue the very body that you sit on. All of your sunshine requests and a request for additional information can be misconstrued as discovery and have been presented in other forms in discovery in this lawsuit. So these are the problems that you caused, Alderman.
So you're saying that me being part of the lawsuit is a conflict of interest, and that's why you didn't have parking commission meetings?
We
is that
have
correct?
sent a legal opinion to you from our attorneys stating that this was a conflict of interest several times. And we've also sent copies to the Board of Aldermen stating that this was a conflict of interest.
All right, so we did have a parking commission meeting in April though, right? And in May, is that correct?
Yes, in order to approve the budget.
And I was present at that meeting, correct?
Yes, you were.
So there's no more conflict of interest, is that correct?
I'm not going to answer that question.
Okay. So let me ask you this. You filed an order of protection against me and something else, and part of that motion was that you're being harassed and that I have a conflict of interest and the subpoena was defective and so on and so forth. And Jared, I'm talking to the treasurer right now, okay?
If you ask for legal issues,
I
if you
didn't
ask for
a legal
legal
opinion, I'm talking to the
issues,
treasurer.
I can advise the treasurer.
Mr. Boyd, if I call upon you to speak, then you may speak, okay? But right now, I'm talking to the treasurer. I'm talking to the treasurer. So, the motion was filed to do just that, is that correct?
To do just what?
It was filed, order of protection was filed against me, citing conflict of interest and some other stuff.
And harassment, yes.
And the judge would not even hear it, is that correct?
I guess not.
Okay, so that puts that to rest as far as a conflict of interest.
No, it does not.
Okay,
I wouldn't have had to file it if you wouldn't have been harassing me.
but the judge didn't hear it, Madam Treasurer. Which
I
means
don't
it was-
care because I still feel like you have harassed me since 2012, since you lost the treasurer's race.
I get some water, please?
Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to go into recess. And when we come out of recess, we're going to be in the leisure room. And the only people that will be allowed to be in the leisure room is the media and staff that's providing official business as far as this board bill. I've asked you to not do that, and you've done it anyway. And so,
I don't know for the records if that complies with the Sunshine Act and open records and open meetings laws. I think meetings are supposed to be open to the public under Missouri law, so I'm not sure if the treasurer's request complies with the law. The clerk maybe can offer his take on that issue, but I'm not sure if that's correct. Mr. Ghali,
I'm not going to give legal opinion. I've already advised.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen.
So here's what we're going to do. I have been advised by legal counsel that we're going to clear the room. Unless you are staff of the treasurer's office that's essential to this budget, you will vacate. Unless you're the media, you will vacate the room right now. Okay. The Streets, Traffic, and Refuse Committee is officially in recess. The Streets, Traffic, and Refuse Committee will resume. I want to thank everybody for your patience. I want to be clear that I try to run a very professional meeting. I try to be respectful for those who appear before this committee in the course of doing my job. Being disrespectful is very counterproductive. Politics is often about some give and take. It's never absolute. The purpose of us having these meetings is talk about legislation, about how to make it better. Sometimes we have to be willing to compromise to make things better. I'm not a person that's always about a win and lose. It's about a win-win. But when I ask the audience to not clap, to not make sound effects, I really mean that. And I mean that with all sincerity because every committee member sitting up here deserves respect. You may have a personal issue with me or any one of the other committee members, but hold it. Because at the end of the day, we have a tough job to do. This is not personal for me. This is about business. This is about the city of St. Louis as a whole. We can do better than we've always done. There's the old saying that if you always do what you've always did, you will always get what you've always gotten. And sometimes we have to stretch, even though it may hurt. The city of St. Louis makes cuts every year. Somebody loses their job, and it's hurtful. But at the end of the day, we must be effective and we must be efficient regardless of the amount of money that we have. There are some offices that carry over money year after year, while other offices have lost staff. Imagine going from 6 people to 2 people in an office. That is happening around the city of St. Louis. It is time that the parking division become part of city government, to be controlled by the city as a whole body, not an island off to itself. Let's be clear. I want to take personal out of this. At the end of the day, all I ask is for respect, because I will respect you. And I ask that you respect me in my position. You don't have to like me. You don't have to like any one of us, but please respect. Because when you lose respect and you disrespect, then it does become personal. Because nobody likes to be disrespected. And raise your hand if you agree with that. No one likes to be disrespected. Nobody. And so we need to move forward. What I'm going to do today, I'm going to hold this board bill and not vote on it today. But what I'm asking is that the treasurer will sit down with me and talk about how we can do this better. We will have another street meeting at 9:00 a.m. on Thursday. You don't all have to show up if you're a parking enforcement person. I mean, you know, you show up if you want to. But it is my hope that it is a bill that we can agree on. So that is my strategy moving forward. I've consulted with my committee members, who are some great committee members. And we want to make sure that we do the right thing by the city of St. Louis. And with that, the Streets, Traffic, and Refuse Committee is adjourned.
And so you said